This is the station info and annual max HS time series dashboard. This dashboard was built to dig into the data for an individual station in more detail. The legend here to the left of the map shows 5 different types of HS data. We have the 2 different types of MOTI data in blue. Snow courses are in yellow. Environment Canada's in red and Parks is in green. So at a glance, we can see the sort of distribution of our stations by type on the map. If you watch the video on the annual point dashboard, we ended it by looking at Silver Star in 2013. So as we zoom in, if we're looking for a specific station, we start to see the labels come on once we get to a certain zoom level. And we can see Vernon. We know we're looking for an Environment Canada station, so if we wanted to, we could turn off some of the other stations, or just turn on Environment Canada, and we get this point here for Silver Star. So clicking on that opens our pop-up, which gives us all of our station metadata, as well as the statistical values that we've calculated, which come from the annual data. So in this case, we have 38 years of data from 1983 to 2021. We have our minimum and maximum observed height of snow at that station. So we see a range of 133 centimeters to 2.5 meters. And then the last 4 are our statistical values. Our average max HS is 180 centimeters. And then our statistical 10, 30, and 100-year values range from 215 centimeters to 265 centimeters. So you can see right from this data, roughly the maximum observed compared to the statistical values. We've seen that this maximum observed value of 251 centimeters falls somewhere between the 30 and 50-year data set, which, if you remember from the other video, hints that that's probably the 2013 value, since that came out to be around 50 years. So what we do here is, if we want to see the time series data, is we've clicked on this point, but we haven't actually selected it. So at the top of the pop-up, we have to click the select button. So what that does is it selects the point within the data set and then populates the time series chart at the bottom here. So right away, we can see we're missing 1 year of data. That's not a zero value; it's a missing value. So something was wrong with the data, or there was no data for that year, so it's excluded. We were interested in the winter of 2013. As we mentioned, 251 centimeters happens to be the maximum observed. So in that 38 years of data, 2013 was the largest year on record. So that's why it came out as being statistically significant. One thing you have to sort of imagine here, it would be nice if in a perfect world we could draw these lines on, but you have to manually do it in your head here. If you imagine the average as 180, you can draw a line, below the 200 line. That's our average. So the reason that 2013 and 2011 are coming out at roughly a 50-year return period is because they're well above that average of 180. I'm going to click on Revelstoke Airport just to highlight. This is something that's quite common with some of the historic data sets. What we're seeing here is a large gap in the data from the mid-90s to the about 2013. This is a combined data set. I think it's actually combining 3 separate data sets. They're all from the Revelstoke Airport, but they changed something, so the station ID changed, but the location was the same. But what I'm expecting, I'm speculating here, but from 1955 to 1995, I believe these were all manual observations. You see this quite commonly with a lot of Environment Canada stations. Around the mid-90s, the data stops. And then sometime in the early 2000s, usually, this one's sort of an exception, but usually they start up again. And I believe that was the time or date in which they installed automated telemetry. So there's a bit of a gap between when the manual observation stopped and when the automated data starts. So if we want to clear our selection, we close our pop-up, but it's still selected. It's this icon here. It shows one selected feature. So we can click the X, and that clears our selection. There's not a lot of other things to highlight on this map. I'll just reset the filter. The main reason these optional filters exist may be that you're coming into this, you're not actually looking for a specific station. You may be looking for a group of stations that meets specific criteria. So again, we may want to find higher elevation points that are still active with 30 years of data. So we can quickly apply those filters. Oh, and we're also not interested in snow courses in this hypothetical example. So we filtered it down. We now see 7-ish high elevation stations with at least 30 years of data that are still active. And knowing our historic snow data in the province, these are all important stations, and they all have sort of different snow climates they represent. We have a good coastal station, a good Columbia station, a good one down near the boundary, and one apex through the middle of the province and Sun Peaks, and one Rocky station, which are quite limited in this data set since we didn't include the data from Alberta.